and right into the stretch. Looking back and throws up the middle. Rose is on his way around. Picked up by Otis.
Here comes the ready or not. Here comes the boys from the south. Here comes the ready or not. How you like me now? I say, here comes the boom, ready or not. Here comes the boys from the south. Boom, here comes the boom, ready or not. How you like me now?
You don't live in Cleveland, you live in Cincinnati.
You are watching live to the best damn Cincinnati sports podcast this side of Goodyear, Arizona. My name is Santori Miles. We got Big Savage Greg, and we got the man, the myth, the legend, Reds writer, Mark Sheldon. How we doing today?
Well, fantastic. How are you guys? A lot of energy. I love it.
I know. It's all Monster Energy and cocoa beans and all kinds of great stuff. So, spring training finally underway. That's probably majority of what we're going to talk about today. How they looking?
Tell you what, it's I know you can't base it on too much. They've only been 4 games, I think, and a lot of workouts. But man, it's going pretty smooth. The people that need to be playing well, they were wondering about, a lot of them are playing well. I mean, certainly there's been a couple of injuries and things like that. Some guys are getting off to a more modified start, but it's been a very pleasant, peaceful camp without much controversy, without much drama, without much strife, any of the like. And the weather's been beautiful, so they've had workouts every single day, and they're not, going inside because of rain, and it's not 41 degrees out like often it was last year. Last year was a really rough weather spring training, but this one's been perfect so far.
Awesome. Anybody that is off to, and not just necessarily in the games, because spring training, guys are working on tweaks in the swings or, trying to master that grip on a new changeup, so to say. But anybody, even just in workouts, kind of flying under the radar that we should know about? Anybody that's really shooting up the organization? There was a lot of buzz around Arroyo today. Anybody along those lines?
Christian Arroyo has made 2 very nice plays so far in his games that he's played. And Rhett Lauder, the first round pick from last summer, looked pretty good. And I watched his live BP a couple of days ago. He looked good, and people were talking about him. I didn't get to see his start, or he appeared in the game yesterday at against the Brewers, but I was at the other split squad game, so I didn't see it, but I heard good things. Chase Petty followed Lauder in the live BP a few days ago, and a lot of people were talking about him as well. He looked pretty good. Who else? It's under the radar. I don't know if he's under the radar, but Frankie Montas certainly looked good today, and he's been the talk of camp. I'd say a lot of guys are saying how just crisp he looks and how great his stuff is and what a good person he is as well. But it's like, I would say his stuff's been almost like regular season ready, but he's not quite there yet as far as his innings, but he's looking very sharp.
All right. Greg, do you have any questions? I got a lot of roster questions here, but I'm sure you've got some other stuff.
Well, no. So, Mr. Sheldon, I just have to ask you. Last year, at the start of the season, everybody's like, the Reds are going to lose 100 games. This is just going to be a rebuilding year. And I think of Forrest Gump when I think of this part. It's like, how you ever seen Forrest Gump, by the way?
Of course.
Remember in the middle, they're trying to find shrimp, and Lieutenant Dan's like, where's this God of yours at? And he's like, it's funny Lieutenant Dan said that, because right then God came. That's when Ellie came up, McClain came up. It's like after that, winning was easy. It was just like all of a sudden, boom, in like the middle of June, all these prospects out of nowhere just come up. Let me tell you something. I've been to plenty of great Reds games, like the Jay Bruce walk-off. I was at that Atlanta game where Ellie hit for the cycle and like Votto hit those 2 homers. That was by far the most exciting, well-energized game I've ever been to in my life as a Reds fan. What was your just take on that whole second half of the season, pretty much, of last year?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'll have to admit, coming into the camp last year, you kind of wondered 90 to 100 losses. I was one of those people that wondered that. But in May 15th, actually, is the date. The Reds were in Colorado. I was out there, and they called up Matt McClain. And they called up Brandon Williamson, but specifically McClain was the one I'm thinking about. And it felt like there was a turning point there. They had a bit of a turning point in Pittsburgh in April. They got kind of annihilated in Pittsburgh. They had a team meeting. They came out and played better. But they really took another step forward when McLean showed up, and it brought another level of energy, another level of excitement, certainly his speed. And then, of course, June gets around here, I think June 6th or 5th, and Ellie De La Cruz comes up. And then the stream just starts, coming. The water spigot is on, and now the prospects are flowing, and you got, Encarnacion Strand came up. Another bunch of other guys. All of a sudden, the names are blanking. Elvie Marte late in the season. Andrew Abbott is on the pitching side, and all these guys were just ready. They all right out of the gate they produced, and then you throw in the younger guys that have been around like Spencer Steer and TJ Friedel, and they were really good. And just this team changed overnight from like kind of just 2022, 2021, 2020. An unathletic power hitting team that struck out a lot to suddenly being this really fun, athletic team that took extra bases, ran like their hair was on fire, very aggressive, just a penchant for excitement. And then, certainly games like the one you mentioned against the Braves and another one right around then, the Dodgers. And they just had so many great endings, so much great electricity. The ballpark was a lot more fun than I've seen it, like you mentioned, in years. And so, yeah, it was definitely a nice surprise. If you're a Reds fan, that was a special season, and obviously they fell short, so it wasn't that special. There's going to be, they play for championships. So if they win this season or next season, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Well, Mark, we have a little bit of a late arrival. This is
technical difficulties. I'm Art. How are you?
How are you?
Great.
This is my actual father. Goes by Bengal Dad, but this is my dad. Long time fans of you, man. I've been reading your stuff as long as I've been alive. Sorry if that dates me a little bit, but it is what it is.
It dates me more than dates you.
a lot of the guests say that, but it is what it is. I can't help it. But Dad, we're just kind of getting into, the team's young. There's a lot of exciting names, and spring training's just getting underway. Do you have any questions along those lines to start?
Well, I'm just I don't know if I have a question, but I'm just hopeful that this year they can perform a little bit closer to the high end of of how they played versus after the All-Star break. They were kind of bipolar, and I guess you would expect that from a really, really young team. I just hope that maybe they're about 75% of the top end, and that's a little more consistent. Because if they can get that much out of those young players consistently and not have as many injuries as they had last year, I think they're going to be all right. I really do.
Yeah, the thing about what's going on this year is I think you look at the gambling lines and some of the analytical websites, they're not as bullish on the Reds as maybe others are. They're still looking at 500 records or even the high 70s of wins. I'm a little more optimistic. I think if they don't make the playoffs, it'd be a disappointment for them, personally. The only issue is that when you're dealing with a lot of young players and a lot of guys that were rookies, just last season, somebody, if not more than somebody, is almost bound to have a regression year. It's just they call back in the old days, sophomore jinx was probably the term. But these guys this team has a lot of sophomores, and
yeah, they do.
Not all of them are gonna keep growing at the same rate. Maybe one guy takes a step back, and year 3 is his big year. So they need enough guys from the youthful people to take steps forward, and I think that's probably why you're seeing some recent signings of some veterans to keep pushing them in competition, so that they don't get comfortable. You don't maybe want them to be too comfortable, and I think that's a good thing. But there's a lot of reason to think this team can keep growing and get better and build on the 82 win season and have a better year, but it's by far no means a lock.
I'm hoping that the young pitchers, the Hunter Greens, the Lodolos, the pitchers of that nature, that I think there's a lot more upside to those guys than what we've experienced so far.
Well, they're supposed to be. I mean, we haven't seen it consistently yet. Hunter Green certainly has had his moments, and Nick Lodolo has had his moments, and Graham Ashcraft has had his moments. none of the three of them have put it together for a full season yet, and that's going to be paramount. Andrew Abbott certainly had a great year, but he kind of ran out of gas. He was just wiped out by the towards the end. But they have the depth. They've got all these pitchers. They got 10 pitchers for 5 spots. Probably, if you just think about it, it's probably pretty easy to figure out who those 5 will be, but not guaranteed. And it will take all those guys, the 3, especially the big 3, to put it all together from pole to pole to have a full, complete season.
Right.
Now, this is a horrible assumption because it never happens to any team in any sport. But assuming everyone's healthy for the whole year, right? Would there be any thought of a 6-man rotation at all, depending on how it's playing out? Or are we thinking of stockpiling some of those arms for the bullpen, which we know has been an area of concern the last few years?
I think there's a couple possibilities. I don't think you'll see a 6-man rotation all the time. I could definitely see when they have a stretch of games without a day off, where they need to give a guy a break or they want to keep a guy a little fresher, and they have the time and the roster maneuverability to do it. You could see a 6th guy get called up. You know, the easy solution would be is if Nick Martinez is a bullpen guy, he could always slot in to start because that's kind of what he does. He's a hybrid kind of pitcher. So if he's not in the rotation, I could see Martinez coming in and making starts when they need it. And the bullpen is, after all the moves they've made, should be deeper and better and stronger and have more energy, assuming the starters do their job. And I wouldn't rule out that one of the starters that's in the competition right now, besides Martinez, could end up in the bullpen. But they also are happy about the idea of having 5 good starters at Louisville and having to be able to reach into that depth, and then having some good starters in Chattanooga even. So they really like their depth, not just at the big league level, but even down below. They have a lot of things they like about what they have right now.
Mr. Sheldon, we have a question here from one of our co-hosts, James, who wasn't able to make it. He wanted me to ask you, what was your most funny interaction as a Reds beat reporter ever since you've been covering the Reds? Do you just have like a funny story?
Let me think. Caught me off guard there. You know, I don't have a funny specific story, but I will say that my favorite moments were often in the clubhouse, and some of the people that were around to make me laugh the hardest or that I just enjoyed. And Marty Brenneman comes to mind first because I was very lucky that he was still doing this on the daily basis when I started in 2006 on the Reds. And he's just, you almost want to get teased and abused by Marty because you know that it's like he likes you. And I certainly got teased enough both on the air and behind the scenes to know that. And so I would say anytime I was around Marty was a good day. I really enjoyed him. And in my first year, I got pranked by Ken Griffey Jr. He obviously had a reputation that preceded him. And I heard things, but I didn't know anything about per se. And him and the other writers and the media relations department fashioned some idea that if I wanted to talk, any reporter, not just me, if any reporter, I was the only one not in the gag, wanted to speak to Ken Griffey Jr., you had to fill out paperwork and submit it within 48 hours notice before he would talk to you. And then when I went to try to talk to him, he's like, and everyone's standing around him. He's like, "Where's your paperwork?" And I said, "I don't have it." And he reaches into his locker, grabs a slip. I fill it out. And he's like, "Okay, thank you. I'll see you in 2 days." And I was really upset. And then they kind of let me know that it was a gag. And I was like, okay, this is okay. So that was like literally at my very first spring training, maybe a week into it. So that was pretty fun.
Now, going back to the bullpen, because I am very, very critical on how the Reds operate. From the seat of my chair in my, second bedroom of an apartment with no actual expertise on how a front office should run a baseball team, I am so very critical. I feel they've done an exceptional job this year of going out and adding depth to that bullpen. And I know there's only X amount of arms that they can keep on the major league team. I know there's going to be injuries. I know there's going to be your taxi squads and guys that are always kind of in between Louisville and Cincinnati. is there anybody early on that you would say is the fans know very well that might already be on the bubble just because of the depth that kind of needs to really get it together?
I mean, based on the signings they've had, both at the rotation and the bullpen, there are going to be pitchers that were major parts of last season's team that will not be on this opening day roster, and they'll be either in AAA or they'll be off the team. And it's not necessarily because they're bad pitchers. Honestly, it's because they just don't. The numbers are tight now, and I look at guys that especially the guys that have options left are certainly vulnerable. You think about a guy like Fernando Cruz, or that was on the team all season and had a lot of success. He's going to have to pitch really well to overtake some of these other guys. TJ Antone, who missed a lot of time with injuries, and when he is on, he is one of the best relief pitchers around. I mean, we saw what he did in 2021, and was it 2021 or 2022? I can't remember now. 2021, I believe. And he was a revelation when he came up, but he's going to have a really good spring to overtake some of the guys that are in this camp. And Brandon Williamson in the rotation was a very dependable starter. He came from he's having a bad year at Louisville, but yet he had his best time pitching in the big leagues. Now he's going to have to fight for a spot. Same with Andrew Abbott. Nothing's guaranteed for these guys. So it's the guys that are out of options that really will be the tough decisions, whether it's, and I don't think they're going to send Lucas Sims down, but he's out of options. And I think Ian Jabot's out of options and things like that. So that's the roster math is going to be tough for some of these guys. So I'll be very curious as we get down to the nitty gritty of who stays and who goes.
I got a question about Connor Phillips.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've seen whatever he's been doing in the last few weeks.
He pitched today, actually. He looked good.
Yeah, I was curious how he looks because of how the season ended for him. Very young. Didn't know if that was going to affect him mentally. Just curious how he looks.
He looks good in camp. He looked good today. Talking to him a little bit, he just says he feels like, he's a lot more in control, not just of his stuff, but his body and how he's supposed to, make pitches. And I don't think last year's game really is indicative of him. You got to remember they were on fumes. They were out of pitching. They had guys that were pitching in situations that they wouldn't have normally relied on him for. They certainly wouldn't have let Andrew Abbott go as long as he did if they were out of it. Connor Phillips probably wouldn't have been pitching if they were out of it, and things like that. I mean, Phillips had, I think, one or two really sensational starts for the Reds, and then of course that last one. But they were hanging by a thread. And even David Bell mentioned today, I think they never held that against him. They knew they were trying to squeeze every drop of gas out of the tank, and for all these guys. And but no, he looks good, and he's certainly in the competition. I would say the prospect types guys like Phillips and Carson Spires and Lyon Richardson and whatnot are maybe the guys on the outside lane as opposed to the inside lane. But I mean, they're in the battle, and anything can happen.
Mark, so Ellie changed his swing during the offseason. How long does that normally take when you start a whole new swing, and how do you think he's been adjusting to it?
It's hard to say because I've only seen him play a couple of games and things like that. I think he had 2 strikeouts today. It's a good question. It's not so much that they changed the swing; it's more they changed the approach. They lessened his leg kick. He's waiting on the ball a little longer, maybe, and a couple of things like that. I don't necessarily think the swing is different. It's just, and it's just the way he does it. And they started in the off season. They were really impressed with it. Come Reds Fest, and then he was working with the hitting coach Joel McKeithen. Even worked with Juan Soto, his friend. So he felt good about what he's done, but of course, none of that matters until you get into a game. So, and he's only had 2 games, so it's hard to say right now. A lot of players are stinky for several games, and then by the last week they turn it on. Joey Votto was notorious at that, even in his best years. And so you don't put a whole lot of stock in these early games. I'll just say that, and and whatever he has, we may see it later.
Well, it could be just coincidence that's what you said he's working on. But correct me if I'm wrong. And even though it's only been a couple games, the 2 hits that I've seen, one, he was well out in front of a pitch and was able to stay back on it, as odd as that seems, and flip it right in front of the left fielder. And then I think yesterday he lined one down the left field line. It was hard to tell by the camera angle, but both were left-handed hits going the other way. And that's a big deal to me.
See, I'll be honest with you. I miss a lot at spring training games, and I know that sounds weird, but we have to – one thing that we get to do during spring training that we don't get to do during the regular season is when the starting pitcher's done, we can go talk to him during the game. And so when that's going on, I'm not seeing the game, quite frankly.
You're good.
So I cannot say I've seen – I don't even remember him getting hits, to be honest with you. So if he had – I'm sure maybe he did. Even if he got one in the game, I don't remember all of them. But I have not – I can't say I've seen every at bat of every player in the game so far, because there's a lot going on between the writing, and I'm a lot more in tune, of course, during the regular season, because whatever I do miss, we have lots of replays. We don't even have TV for most of these games, so if I miss something, I won't see it ever again. But yeah, we're in the clubhouse a lot. Like, we have to walk down to right field in Goodyear, and there's a spot where we get players, but you can't really see what's going on the field. And then in the other ballparks around here, there's various places we have to go, and usually we can't see what's going on.
That's all right. Like I said, I'm relying on someone sitting in section 209 with an Android, posting a fuzzy video, and I'm like, I think that went to left field, but that's Ellie for sure.
Yeah, so it's he's got work to do, but they've already pretty much said he's the shortstop, so I don't think the fear of, not that there was ever a fear, but I don't think him going to the minors is going to be an option for him. And it's certainly on the table for all the young players that could happen, but it seems pretty secure that he'll be the shortstop this season to open, and he'll have the opportunity to keep working on his swing, both from the right-handed and left-handed side.
What does Jonathan India's role look like this year?
Well, he's got a modified situation. He'll be in games, I think, in the next week or so, but he's going to be essentially, the term isn't being used, but sure looks like a utility player. Mm-hmm. They're talking about besides second base, but that's going to be Matt McClain's spot for the majority, assuming he's healthy, which we can't assume just yet because he's out. But Indy will play some second base. He's going to play some first base. I saw him working there the other day. Third base, which is his position in college. And then they're talking about left field, and he's done some work out there too. So whether these all work, hard to say. He really wants to make it work. He's saying all the right things. He wants to be in the lineup every day, and they want him in the lineup every day because they value his bat. But for that to happen, he's going to have to move around.
How's Joey Votto doing? I know he's about as private as it can get. I think he posted on Instagram today that if I don't get signed soon, I'm going to stop putting my shopping carts back. And he put a shopping cart right next to the corral return, which in Joey Votto's humor, that's right up his alley. But is he still trying to get signed? Do we know if he's looking into coaching at all?
Based on the videos I've seen, a couple of days ago, he had a really funny bit on Instagram, like at the car wash and things like that. And he just looked at the camera all sense like, this is not spring training. And it's funny. I give him a lot of credit for being able to say that stuff. And you've seen him at hockey games and pasta making and who knows, but more importantly, he's also been working out and hitting and showing off his shoulder and things like that. I haven't spoken to Joey since the day he was didn't have his option picked up. But I still think he wants to play, and I think what's going on with him is indicative of a lot of players. If you notice, there's a lot of players languishing on the market that are younger, have better numbers and things like that. So I don't think it's just a Joey Votto thing. I think it's a industry issue with free agents. Cody Bellinger is about to formally sign with the Cubs. 3-year deal, and I think that might start opening things up a little bit, or at least you think it would.
Mm-hmm.
And there's teams that need Joey Votto, or at least a guy like him, whether it's him or not. I don't know. You look at the Angels, you look at the Padres, and of course the Blue Jays are always out there as a possibility. I don't know if that would work or not, but that would certainly be meaningful to him personally. As far as coaching, I don't think that's something that I see him doing full time. I think he certainly has a lot to teach people, and he's always been very generous with the young Reds players when they ask him for help. But I also know he's got a lot of other irons in the fire and things he's interested in. I don't see him coaching or managing at a full-time level, but I wouldn't rule out down the road, if the Reds leave the door open like I've heard they have, that he could come back and visit camp and be a presence on this team. I could see, obviously we've heard him do broadcasting, and I think he'd be very talented at that too. So there's some roles for Joey after he's done playing, but I don't think he's done playing yet.
Okay, Mark, we're just about at 25 minutes. I know you're wanting to get something to eat. You still good for another minute or so, or you want to dip out?
Yes, this is fun. So yes, please.
Yeah, all right.
I got a question about the signing of Candelario.
Yeah.
Is that going to move Strand more into I won't say a permanent, but a longer or more steady role as a DH?
I don't think so. I get the sense that they still look at him as the main first baseman, and Candelario is going to be a guy that plays both first and third and DH. I don't know how that's all going to look, but they seem pretty content on Encarnacion Strand, of getting a lot of that time. I still haven't quite wrapped my head around, even going back to the winter when they signed him and all that, of how this rotation is going to work. And now it's a little smaller because it sounds like McLean's going to be mostly at second and De La Cruz is mostly at short. But somehow they're going to have to figure out how to juggle India, Marte, and Candelario. And then don't even get me started on what happens if Tony Kemp or Josh Harrison make the team, because then you get to figure those guys out too. Yeah. But so there's going to be some shuffling at times. I don't know how it's going to look. Sounds like Candelario might play more he's got more experience at third base, but he's played a lot more at first this past year than he has before. So how it all looks remains to be seen.
Yeah, I hate to see them limit the at-bats on Marte and Strand. I really, really like Marte's swing.
Yeah, it's I don't know about limiting the at-bats, but as it's been around here for a few years, I think they like the idea of having a lot of options and cycling around and rotating. I think a lot of old school people don't like this, but I think the days of one guy playing one position, 162, over.
Yeah.
You're going to see a lot of moving around. Spencer Steer moved around all the time.
Yeah.
But he played 155 games. That's just the way the game is. So I think guys will be playing a lot, but they may be playing in different spots. I think Marte is mostly a third baseman, so I don't think you have to worry about him moving, but there's going to be guys moving in order to make this lineup work. It's going to be matchup based on what the opponents are doing, and they're going to put out their best 9 players to try to make it work.
Well, it's funny, going all the way back to the 70s or even the 80s. They used to always say you had to bat the guy in the same batting order. He had to play the same position on defense, and if not, you'd screw with his head, and that's why he's going into a slump. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore.
I just don't think that's how people are wired anymore. I think I'm not even sure if that was the case in the 70s. I was a little kid then, but I just know that, at the end of the day, they just want to play. And I don't think they make it more complicated than that. I know guys like India have specifically said they don't like DHing. He wants to be in the field, and he feels like he's more in the flow of a game
right
when he's in the field, especially obviously at his natural position. But he told me if he had to choose between DH and left field, he'd take left field. And, and then I think as far as where they bat in the order, things like that, I just think the style of players now have to just be flexible. I mean, we're all in our jobs even are doing things in different ways than they were done in previous generations. So I don't see why baseball is any different. People have found other ways to figure out how to play, and sometimes they reinvent the wheel. Sometimes they change the names of pitches. Sometimes they do other things, but it's still baseball, and they can figure it out,
Well, the thing that kind of works for the Reds when you have as many versatile guys and as deep as they are, because if you just try to find 12 to 13 guys, however they're going to split up that offense, you're leaving some good names off the list one way or the other. You just are. It's not going to be that easy. But as guys get cold, as guys inevitably tweak a hammy or an oblique or whatever it is, or they sprain a wrist, it's nice to have that depth. Because, looking at it from a surface level right now, you're like, oh my God, well, if I have a left-handed lineup, who am I going to leave out? And it's like, well, the chances of being in the middle of everything in late July and having every single one of those guys at your disposal, those odds aren't super high, and all of them playing well at the same time and being healthy, that's almost a zero chance. So the benefit of having all of those guys, it makes David Bell's job a lot easier as the season goes on.
These are good problems to have. I remember if you go back even to 2022, they lost 100 games, and you guys can remember those lineups they were running out. And you can also go back to even other times when they just didn't have they were calling up players that, well, they were alive, and they were healthy, and that's what got them into the lineup. And now it's a whole different criteria, and it's, they're playing. I mean, people want them to win. So, I mean, if this is a depth, I know that means sometimes a favorite player may not be in the lineup, but if they want to just, keep the tried and true and go with the same thing all the time, Joey Votto's option would have been picked up, and they would never have added, another veteran like Candelario when they have all these rookies and young players. So it's about having depth. They don't want to be caught flat-footed with pitching depth. They got more than they can possibly think they might need, but we've seen after having 17 starters get used last year that you can't have enough pitching depth. In the infield, after India got hurt and Votto was hurt and someone else got hurt, I'm losing the name, but Marte broke his nose. I mean, things like that. Never
Yes,
know
he
what's
did.
going to come up. And they want protection. So, whether these guys like Harrison, Kemp, and Ford, if they don't make the team, if they go to AAA, I don't know if they would. They have opt-outs, but that's what they're here for. They're here to push the young guys, and if they decide to stick in the organization afterwards, to try to earn a shot back in the big leagues as soon as they can.
Mr. Sheldon, we had the pleasure of having John Sadak on last week, and I asked him this question. So if you had to think of who's going to lead the team in batting average, hits, or home runs, I mean, you could argue 3 players for each category, like 3 or 4 players. If you had to predict who's going to finish the year leading the team in batting average, hits, and homers, which player do you think will lead each category?
I think maybe with McLean for batting and maybe hits if he's healthy. Homers, I was talking with somebody about that. That's a good one. I mean, I could see it being, certainly Steer. Candelario, if he plays every day, would be interesting because he's trending in that direction. And then you put him in Great American Ballpark, and that could be interesting. And then, of course, Encarnacion Strand for homers if he plays every day. I mean, he's certainly capable of breaking out. What was it? Hits, homers, and batting average?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll say McLean, Steer for the hits, and Strand for the homers.
Yeah, stolen bases. We all know it's going to be Ellis. That wasn't even worth bringing up.
It'll be Ellie, but I'll tell you what, TJ Friedel will be another guy that will be up there, and also McLean. I think those guys can run. Friedel, he's not the fastest guy on the team, but he's one of the smarter base runners, and he has a lot of ways he can hurt you too.
Man, Friedel's a steal. I can't remember the exact details, but didn't we get him because there was some kind of it was like he was eligible to be drafted, but nobody drafted him and somehow fell through the cracks?
He fell through the cracks at Nevada. He was in Nevada, and I don't know what the rule was or whatever why he wasn't taken, and then somehow the Reds got him and they signed him as an undrafted free agent, plain and simple. And that guy has worked his way up here. I mean, you remember 2022, he was up and down 5 times. Mm-hmm. And, he come back to 2023, and he wasn't supposed to be the main center fielder. That was still supposed to be Nick Senzel. And he made it so that Nick Senzel lost his gig and became a utility guy. So, and then you throw in the bunting and the fact that he's been as good as against lefties as he's been against righties or close to it. He's made a case to be in the lineup every day.
Dad, you got anything else?
The only thing that keeps popping in my mind of all things is the shift.
Yeah,
because they got rid of the shift, the extreme shift, I guess, a couple years ago.
Yeah, it's still there, but yes, it's not like the way it used to be. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on them eliminating the extreme shift?
I mean, I get it. Honestly, I liked all the new rules. I think last year that was. I think the shift made baseball kind of predictable. Unfortunately, I always wondered how a guy like Jay Bruce or Joey Votto, they have the third baseman playing short right field, and these guys would hit the tar out of the ball, 100 plus miles an hour exit velocity, and they go right into the glove. And it was just because everyone can scout everybody now, and everyone has the video, and everyone has the metrics and the analytics and the data telling you exactly what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. And it honestly, it made games less interesting. I know that they were just exploiting opportunities that have been in the game for 100 years, but I think the technology has gotten to the point, and the quality of the scouting is that you imagine if somebody was playing short right field from the infield when Babe Ruth was playing or Lou Gehrig? I mean, that would be insane. And people just didn't do it because they didn't think of it. And it took like Joe Madden or somebody, from the A's probably to come up with the ideas of why don't we stick the third baseman in right field or put him behind second base or do this and that so we can eliminate any chance of a left-hander ever getting a hit. So I think the opening up the field a little bit has made it much more fun. And certainly the Reds exploited it because they had the athletes to do it. They were able to punch singles through the gaps and take their extra base. And I think maybe you guys would agree that it's much more interesting to watch the games this past year than it's been in a while.
Oh, for sure. The quality of baseball was so much more exciting.
It's just
I'm glad speed is now part of the game again.
Yes.
I love stolen bases. I love first to third. I love all that stuff.
And they did it really well. Friedel was one of those guys that did it well. McLean did it well. Sear did it well. Certainly De La Cruz did it at another level. And you'll see in a story, it's in my newsletters coming out tomorrow, actually. And, bunting's even back now. And that's something that's been away for the last 20, 25 years. Bunting went out of vogue. And now the Reds have the right people in place, namely Friedel, but others too, that can drop bunts and add another dimension of unpredictability and using speed. So the new rules and the way things are set up really are in the Reds' favor for this type of personnel they have.
Only if Billy Hamilton could have bunted.
And
I
Drew
love
Stubbs.
Billy Hamilton.
Billy
Drew
Hamilton.
Stubbs,
Drew Stubbs. They both would have been, you got to go back to Norris Hopper for the last really great Reds bunter.
If Billy could have bunted like Norris, he'd have hit 600.
Yeah. Brett Butler was here the other day, and that's what my newsletter's about. And he was like, you could add 30 points to your average. If you're why settle for being like a 250 or 260 guy if you could throw the bunt in, and it's not just because you can bunt for hits, but if people like now with Friedel are coming in on the grass waiting for a bunt, he could put one over your head with a 3 swing. So, you create the element of surprise. He might bunt, but you don't know when. And
how many of those bunts get thrown down the right field line?
You create havoc. I mean, Ellie De La Cruz was and same thing with Friedel. They were working with Brett Butler. If Ellie De La Cruz could sneak a bunt once in a while, wow, what could a throw look like trying to get him out?
Yes.
I got one last question for you, and this kind of goes back to where I don't know if you just said it half-heartedly or whatnot, where you said maybe someone from the A's figured it out. We know they've been very innovative with how they've had to operate, being one of the smallest markets in the history of ever for sports. Do the Reds do anything or a modern-day version of Moneyball? I know everybody kind of throws that around, and that's something that was obviously being implemented almost 30 years ago at this point. But with the Reds being kind of, we say small market, and they are, but sometimes they unload, and for them unloading, it's some kind of like medium market. How how much of that goes into effect with decisions that they make?
A lot. And I mean, the Reds front office, especially in the last 5 years when Dick Williams took over as the president of baseball ops, but even now that Dick's gone under Nick Kroll as well, the analytics and video department is exploded in people. There's people around this team that I don't even recognize just because there's so many new people, and I see them in the hallway. I see them around the cages. If you saw how many Rapsodo and TrackMan machines and dudes with iPads are running around this joint, that's all because of Moneyball indirectly. That's where that started. Back then it was a computer program and maybe some proprietary software, but now it's become the Reds have their own system. I'm sure they have their data analysis guy. Nick Wan is his name. They have Sam Grossman as their assistant GM, who's got an analytics background and Ivy League education. And there are all these dudes and women in that ballpark that are specifically there to run numbers and to look at video and do all those things. So, and the Reds are not just the only team that do this, but since that's the team I've covered for the last 19 seasons, there's been an absolute explosion in those types of assets and talent to exploit every little nuance of the game and look for an edge. They've done that much better these last few years, but you can definitely see it in the people, and you can certainly see it how they go about it. David Bell certainly embraces it, and some of his coaches, and Nick Kroll and his people certainly have embraced all this stuff too. They are all in, but they are also smart enough to understand that, I think there's been a correction around the game too. I think the A's had an idea, and a lot of people followed it, namely the Red Sox, later on the Cubs, and things like a lot of teams like the Cubs and the Dodgers now, they figured out how to do the analytics, but also spend a lot of money. And now with the Reds and other teams, they can't necessarily spend their way to do it, but they will certainly provide their people with the best information that they can get. And a lot of it's just by data and video. And, these guys all have iPads. These guys all have stuff that the players are watching it. The players are into it. Nick Martinez got his pitch design certification from what do you call it? The place out in Seattle with Kyle Boddy. Why is that? Oh, Driveline. Sorry, Driveline. Rapsodo. That's Joey Votto, of course, is one of the early guys that embraced all the metrics of advanced analytics. So it's just players are all around the league are in it, but they also know you have to use your eyes, you have to use your ears, you have to use your instincts, and that's what makes where things are now even more interesting, because I don't think it's one or the other. It shouldn't be one or the other. If you're all in on just old school stuff, you're going to miss things, and if you're all in on analytics, you're definitely going to miss things, because sometimes the numbers don't always tell the whole story.
Yeah, and as someone that wasn't good enough to play baseball, but as somebody that has built my entire small social media following basically around spreadsheets, I really appreciate that teams actually do use that approach. I'm sorry, my beagle's getting a little cabin fever, but there's I see nothing wrong with expanding the organization to get more intelligent people in there to find ways to win.
There's a lot of them, and it's crazy. I have no doubt other clubs have more of the same. It's just I've been around the Reds for this long, and I know how much bigger the front office has gotten.
Absolutely.
Great.
All right. Well, Mark, we are at 45 minutes.
Oh wow!
This is typically where we do wrap the show up, and I know you got to get an In-N-Out burger.
I got to do something like that. Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, but seriously, thank you for all the time and everything you've given us tonight. All the insight you provide. We'd love to have you back on at some point. I know your life's about to get real busy for the next 9 to 10 months.
Yeah, be longer. Yeah, you're right.
But I hope you're incredibly busy through about the first week in November, and hopefully we can talk again sometime.
Well, thank you very much. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate the time. And gentlemen, have a great night. Enjoy the baseball season.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
Take care, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Well, that was Mark Sheldon.
There we go.
A lot of good insight there.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Like with the pitching and all that and stuff. And, Santori, the analytics you brought up, because I was thinking about asking a Moneyball question myself. That's so cool with all the iPads and stuff, this, that, and the other. That is so cool how they use all that stuff now.
It's nice to hear because there's a spot for it. I do think, like he said, there are some teams that probably we're full bore on this. Then there's, and I fight the battle every day with my dad because Dad, I think he's invested in it to a degree, and I think I was way overboard with it for a while. He's definitely more old school than I am, but if you can find a way to aptly blend them together,
yep,
it's dangerous. It really
There's still something to be said about the eye test.
Well, sure. I mean,
Sometimes
it's just
you can just tell.
Well, I know it's a silly scene, but there's a movie.
I know where
with Clint Eastwood.
Yes. Where Trouble with the Curve. Where John Goodman tells him
he can hear it.
He could hear that the kid didn't quite hit the curveball well.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in analytics that's going to show what that man could just hear. And I know that's probably a gross exaggeration
sure it is.
Of what happens. But it's like when Greg and I are watching film the other night and I'm tearing through a couple prospects just rapid fire. And I'm like, no, I don't like his feet are. This isn't going to go well. He's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, I guarantee you he doesn't do this well. And like the next play in the film, there was like outside contain where the kid screwed it up. And I'm like, well, he's duck-footed. Like it's little things like that your analytics aren't going to catch. And that's the old school stuff. The being able to look at something and be like, seen that before. That ain't going to work.
What's strange is I don't know if it was the very thing that analytics did better than anything is the one thing they got rid of, which was the shift.
The shift, yeah.
I don't ever want to argue when we have guests on here. I just don't want to do it.
No, it's not good for the show.
No.
And I understand every sport is designed this way. They always bend their rules for offense.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way
the NFL does it all the time.
Sure they do. But my God, hit the ball the other way. You make better hitters out of people if they don't just think about pulling the ball all the time. But people aren't in the game for singles. That's not what they're in it for.
Back to Trouble with the Curve. Do you think that movie, because that came a year or two after Moneyball, do you think that movie was made to make fun of Moneyball? Because I liked it how John Goodman's character is like, instead of buying all these newspapers and stuff, you can just look on the computer. It can tell you everything. And Clint Eastwood's like, what does it tell you? How to scratch your ass also? Do you think that was to mock Moneyball, that movie?
I don't know if it's to mock Moneyball.
Especially it was just old school versus new school.
Right.
Really all it was.
And like we said, there's a place for both of it. There really is.
Exactly.
It's like here's a perfect example. Analytics isn't going to tell you when someone's tipping their pitch because their elbows dipped a little bit. Well, that's not going to show on an analytics report.
What's one thing that you always hear people say when a guy can really hit? And they're going to say one of the first things it is that they hear is it sounds different coming off their bat. Mm-hmm. Analytics doesn't give you any audible. So there are things that you can tell.
If you want to hear the perfect sound of a ball coming off a bat, and it's great because no one ever goes to their games, go look up some Ohtani highlights out from the Angels. When he squares a ball up, it sounds like a shotgun blast.
Right.
It's not one of these doinker. It's bang. And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to sound like.
And they talk about hitting the ball in the sweet spot and the launch angle and all that stuff. You can ask any player if they hit the ball precisely right because you don't feel the ball hit the bat. If anybody's played the game, even at a not hole level, and you hit a ball completely square, you don't feel the ball hit the bat. And that's when you know you squared it up. I don't need a computer to tell me if I squared it up or not.
And you know this as well as I do because I used to hit in the cages with you. I mean, we used to go, 2-3 times a week growing up, and we spent a ton of time in batting cages. if I have an aluminum bat and I hit one off the handle at 45 miles an hour, especially if it's cold, it's going to ring and you're going to have some bumblebees, even at 45. I have a wooden bat now when I go to the cages. I go to D-Bat up in Westchester. Great place, by the way, if you've never been. And I'll hit 70, 80, 90, whatever. If you hit one off a wooden bat square, you don't feel it.
It's perfect.
I mean, obviously your arms will be like, oh, there's recoil, but there's no feeling in your hands.
No.
At all. It's just, it feels like you just took a batting practice swing on a balloon, is all it feels like. But if you hit one wrong with an aluminum bat, you feel it at the wrong speed. Now, if you hit one wrong fast on a wooden bat, that's like the worst feeling on the planet. But,
well, you're going to break the bat a lot of times.
Oh, you got bumblebees and your hands just sitting there vibrating.
So, something with that. I was told you were a batting coach for your son's team. So, what was the main thing you taught people how to bat? Like, what was your main strategy other than hit the ball?
Jesus. Do you want me to answer this?
No, I'm interested to hear what this is.
The second half of it was the identical thing. The second half of what Mark Sheldon said is what I tried to teach everybody. What he said Ellie was doing, first off, he lowered his leg kick, which if you remember last week we were talking about it and you said he changed his stance. And I said, well, I hope he reduced his front leg kick. That was one thing. But what I always taught the kids was let the ball travel deep. There's no shame in hitting the ball the other way, because if you let the ball get further and closer to the plate before you commit, first off, you're going to have a better idea if that ball's in the zone or not. You're not going to commit too early. And when you swing late, you always put the barrel on the bat.
Yeah, you don't hit
the barrel's the last part of the bat that comes through the zone.
It is very, very rare that you let the ball get deep on you and hit one off the handle the other way. If you hit it the other way, it might go on the ground. You might pop it up, but it's going to be off the barrel.
But the more important piece of that is it gives you a longer period of time. As that ball's traveling the 60 feet, 6 inches, I'd much rather make the decision at, let's just say, after it's traveled 40 feet instead of 20 feet. It gives you a lot more time to tell to read the stitches. You can tell if it's a curveball. You can tell if it's a knuckleball. You can tell anything other than the best pitch in baseball being a changeup, because the spin doesn't change. No, it just makes sense. It makes sense to let the ball travel.
Well, that's funny since we're talking pitches. Like you hear some of these pitchers, oh, this guy's developed a changeup, this guy's developed a curveball. My concern with that is, doesn't that take time? You mean like can't that mess up your other pitches if you're trying to do another pitch? Because I think I've heard that somewhere at times. Or
I think all that's going to happen is you're not going to have a lot of confidence in it, and if you don't throw a curveball right, you're in deep trouble. It's going to be as
cement mixer,
calls it a cement mixer, and it's just going to be rotating like this, and it's going to hang right here at a lesser speed than a fastball, and you're just going to jump all over it, because the higher the pitch is in the zone, that creates its own elevation. That's why those balls get jacked out of the park. You don't have to lift the ball. It's already the lifting's being done for you.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything waist high, really thigh high or higher is a problem.
Yeah, it's got to be right around the knee, between the knees and the middle of the shin, really. That's a good strike in that area. Or just missing the strike zone is not a bad thing if you're a pitcher, because most guys are going to still swing at it and they're going to drive it right in the ground.
Yeah. Well, speaking of driving, man, I tell you what, I know it's only spring training, a couple of games. So Will Benson, can we just agree? This is going to be our 9th hitter, Will Benson. This will be our 9th hitter. Now, the question is, will he be our full-time right fielder, or whatever the heck they have him play, or is he going to switch off with Fraley?
They'll switch off with Fraley.
Fraley's going to switch off because 2 lefties.
Are they both lefties?
Yeah, they're both left-handed hitters.
But when you have a right-handed pitcher, which is almost all the time, one of them is going to be in left field. One of them is going to be in right field. Candelario is going to be batting somewhere.
Yeah.
You know what's so weird? There's so much depth on this team, and I focus more on the infield.
Right.
I forgot about Steer till he said Steer, and I forgot about Friedel.
Exactly.
Every one of these players, you don't mind having them up in crunch time. That's when you determine if it's a good player or not.
Right. Well,
You want that player up in the 9th inning. We need to keep a rally going. There's not too many batters on the Reds, other than probably Ellie, that I don't like when Ellie comes up at crunch time.
I don't like when he
Maybe I'll
comes up
take
in
my
crunch
two on that.
time, but you got to admit the other team's probably going, "Oh shit."
Oh, sure.
He's
they
either
are.
going to strike out or we're screwed. That's the way it is.
Well, Santori, speaking of hitting the ball, remember when we took Kieran to his first ever baseball game and he's asking you, what does it sound like when someone hits a home run? Wasn't it just the very next pitch, Ellie hits it out of the park? You're like, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, he said, I just want to know what it sounds like and what it looks like. Because I've always heard, but and he goes, what's it look like? And then as soon as he says, what's it look like, Ellie pulls one down the right field line. It was against the Diamondbacks. It went to the moon deck and right center field. And we're sitting in like way, way, way up top looking straight down on it. And I went, so the ball had never even like got to us. We're just watching this little line drive below us. And I went, like that? And he's like, what? Let's just keep going. He goes, how'd you know? And I'm like, it's funny he asked that because I think one of the first Reds games I ever sat down with you, I was real lucky enough to go, and it wasn't one of the first, but it's early on. Dad, we went to I don't even know who was playing, but I remember it was in the diamond seats. We were lucky enough to sit behind home plate. It was the game where Juan Castro came over and shook our hand because we just sold Juan a car.
Golden hands.
Yep. And I was just like, Dad, what's it like? You're like, when you're down at this level, you will know immediately if it's gone. And then, we're sitting there and someone hits like a pop-up to shallow center field. And you hear everybody going, because the ball's hitting the air. And I'm going, well, that's not even close. And you know immediately. And then I'm like, I still want to see a home run. And when you're down there and they hit one perfect, you're going, oh, that's not coming back.
Speaking of Juan Castro, please tell me, you got Santori. I've tested Santori's memory a lot, Bengal Dad, and his memory, I don't know how he remembers everything, but let's see if you guys remember this. 2002 or 3, first year Great American Ballpark Open, we're playing the Yankees. About to go to extra innings, but LaRue hits a double, scores the guy home. Then it's Juan Castro, then Felipe Lopez. I'm like, oh, Juan Castro, you're our only hope here because Felipe Lopez, by Lord. Juan Castro, game-winning hit right by Jason Giambi's glove. Jason dives for the ball. Do you guys remember that game at all? It
was on May 5th. It was on Cinco de Mayo.
Are you serious?
Look it up. I bet it was on May 5th.
I was not expecting you guys at all. I'm like, literally, I will ask him stuff like Santori, who was like the 2004 draft pick from this round. He's like, oh, that guy. Come on, Rick, keep going with me. Now I know where he gets it from. How the heck?
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty darn sure that was on Cinco de Mayo.
But it was the first year that Great American Ballpark did open. I do remember we were playing the Yankees, though, and that was that was a great game to attend. But I'm going to look this up. You guys keep talking.
Yeah. Numbers are very easy for Dad and I, which makes dates easy, draft picks easy, stats easy. I was thinking about. I think we probably each have a little bit of the autism that's just undiagnosed, but I think it's there.
I was thinking about a question that I asked John Sadak last week, and it was kind of a layup because I knew the answer when I asked him about what's more important: Hunter Green having a big year, Lodolo having a big year, or Ellie.
Yeah, the guys that play every day.
Right. My guess is, though, I think it's most important for Ellie to have a big year than any player on the team.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's swagger that there's almost like it's almost like there's a tailwind. When he does something, everybody just relaxes and everything just falls into place.
Well, he's a catalyst player. Billy was the same way. When Billy was hot, this team was really, really fun. Unfortunately, it's always the most erratic player.
I think when Ellie does something, I think the players feel like they have Superman on their side or something.
Probably.
There's something different when he plays well.
Well, it's like when I coached at LaSalle and we had Gibran. If you knew Gibran was going to have a good game, and you could tell by warm-ups, you're down on the field, everybody's stretching, the music's going. It was one of those things where you're kind of like, who are you playing? Oh, we're playing this guy and this team, and they've got this. And I was like, I really don't give a shit. I got Gibran. It's he's healthy, he's good, he's in it. I don't care. It makes everything else more confident.
Greg, I'm worried what the answer you're going to come up with.
No, I was wrong about the season. It was my senior year in high school. It was 2005. I thought you were wrong at first, but the Yankees weren't even on here and all that and stuff. I thought that's this stupid app. But no, my Bengal Day, I don't deny you're probably.
Well, keep looking for it. I'm very curious now.
No. Wait, here we go. Scheduling results. Here we go. Okay, Saturday is. Jeez. Oh, here we go. I hate to wait. We played the Yankees in 2000. Oh, give me a break. Oh, it was 2004. See, I can't even remember. It's season. No, we're not leaving until we get this solved. Not on my watch. Here we go. 2004. Aha. Here we go. 5th. Yeah, 5th. Yeah, May's the 5th of the month. No. God dang it. The Yankees aren't on here. Santori, you might have better luck than I would.
I know how to use Google better.
Yeah, no kidding. But no. Bengal Dad, though, I would literally ask this dude questions so many times, and he just kept pushing me. And
I couldn't tell you who we were playing, but I know Juan Castro had one heck of a game on Cinco de Mayo, and George Grand was just kind of crowing about it.
Well, here I could type in Juan Castro game winning hit. Yeah, Juan Castro. Come on.
This probably isn't very riveting.
Yes, that's Juan Soto.
Juan Castro walked it off against the Yankees on Cinco de Mayo.
For the win.
Cinco de Mayo 2004. There it is.
For the win. And it's recorded.
No. I believe it. I've been like that. But I remember all these random games, and your guys are like, oh yeah, sure, I remember that game in 2000.
By the way, it was not the Yankees though. It was the Brewers.
I don't remember the team.
No, it was the Yankees. Okay.
And it was Lyle Overbay at first. And your favorite, Bill Hall at second base.
I didn't say it. I didn't say anything. No more clown pictures. I didn't say it. He did. I did not say anything.
Greg, look at this. You want to know how good I am at the Google machine?
Oh, no, I didn't want to. I thought you were going to show me a clown.
I'm great at the Google machine, Greg.
Let's see it.
What he hides underneath there.
Lyle Overbay.
Look at Castro.
I liked Juan Castro.
Is it George Grand? I can't hear it. Is it George Grand?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it's the Brewers broadcast.
Bengal Man, I'm really going to put your brain to the test right here on this one because this was the 1999 year when Greg Baum was on the team. Randy Johnson versus Ron Malone. Diamondbacks are here in Cincinnati. We won the game 2-0. One was an RBI, but who hit the only home run for the Reds that game against Randy Johnson? He hit it like in the upper deck. He just got a hold of one and just yanked it out of the park.
Pokey Reese.
The other Grand Marshal coming up.
Dimitri Young.
Meat. So he hit it right-handed.
Yeah. No, wait. It was going to it was the third base side, so it was near left field, so that meant
right-handed.
Right-handed, okay.
We do have a sports question here in the chat. If a tagged player gets hurt on the tag, what happens? I assume this is in relation to our tagged wide receiver, T. Higgins.
Right. Not at all.
If T gets hurt while he's on the tag,
he makes a lot of money for not playing.
Correct. It's a guaranteed contract. He gets paid.
Oh, yeah.
The tag is the absolute worst thing in professional sports. I hate it. I hate it from a GM point of view. I hate it from a coach point of view. I hate it from an agent point of view. And I hate it from a player point of view. I don't know why anybody votes for the damn thing. It's dumb.
Yeah, I'm just not.
There's no benefit to it.
The only benefit you have, if it's a player that takes it as an insult and wants to and realizes he's on a contract year and busts his ass, versus doing what Jesse Bates did. and
Well,
being
that's what
afraid
T's
and
gonna
protect-
do.
and protecting himself.
So, do you guys see a deal happen? Like, there's one report.
No.
Ben Baby said they're probably going to trade him. And some pops on my phone, we're going to trade him. But then, like, another report says, no, we want to see T here. Duke Tobin's not going to say anything. But one thing I want to say right now, Joe Mixon, you know how they're like, oh, he did a great job for us last year. But you notice he was not committed to him going into the future at all yet.
That's because the Bengals have to make a serious financial decision regarding Joe in about 10 days. And it just got a few $1 million harder now that T's on the tag.
Yep.
Because, I mean, here's the deal. If T gets an extension and his cap hit is $15 million and Joe's roster bonus is 3, just take those two numbers into consideration. That's 18. Well, now T's contract is 21 and Joe's roster bonus is 3, or I can save 5. So I'm at a 24 to keep both of them, or if I keep T and cut Joe, I'm at 15. If I keep Joe and extend T or cut Joe, it's one of those things where you start looking at production, you start looking at the other positions, you start looking at what cost of replacement is, and you start looking at what everybody else costs.
Can we just cut Joe, get him back on a reduced salary again, and then trade T. Higgins to the Vikings for Jefferson?
No.
Can we just get that done?
The trade that everybody's kind of spitballing right now, which I think I could see happening, is obviously it's an easy one to conjure up if you're trying to be creative, is Tennessee with Brian Callahan.
Oh, yeah.
They've already stated that they're okay trading out of number 7. They've already stated they need a wide receiver. You could swap number 1s with Tennessee and move up 11 spots in the draft and give them T. Higgins and clear $22 million. I don't need any extra picks. I'll take being in the top 7 and take the best player available.
Yeah, I don't know if I like that. You're trading T. Higgins in order to move up 7 spots in the draft. That's
11.
all you're getting from him.
11 spots in the draft.
I mean, 11, but that's all you're getting.
Well, it's a
crapshoot because it's the draft.
Well, it could be. Well, you're also clearing $22 million in cap space.
Yeah,
keep that in mind.
I'd rather them trade for a bona fide player, especially if they could find a bona fide offensive lineman.
Okay, well, maybe you parlay that number 7 overall pick and trade for the best right tackle you can.
Let me ask you.
There's things you can do.
Way too creative for the Bengals.
The other thing is there's a couple offensive linemen in free agency that are worth decent money that have already been connected to the Bengals if you're willing to keep spending.
That's true.
So if you get to that point where I've already signed my right tackle and I'm sitting there at 7 and I've got $22 million left to play with and Malik Neighbors is there.
Oof.
I know you don't know who that is yet, but you will.
I
mean, there's a lot of talent. Joe Alt is there, the best offensive lineman in the draft, because I think he might be there at 7. It might be a stretch, but I think he might be there. It gives you a lot of opportunity to go, what do I want to do? Who's the best player? Because there's going to be 3 quarterbacks that come off in the top 4 picks. And if you need another receiver, you can go that route. Or if you're like me and convinced you could find T's replacement in the 2nd or 3rd round,
right.
then you're sitting there at 7 with all these offensive linemen available that in this scenario, you've already fixed the problem because I've signed one in free agency. Now I'm looking at pass rushers or corners. I know corner is on the Bengals' top priority list. No one wants to hear that, but it is. I would, if they've already fixed right tackle, take a corner. I don't care. I'll take all the corners I can get.
Thank you.
Not that I think he'd go at number 7, but for those of you that want Brock Bowers, there's your opportunity. There's so many things that opens up if you're able to fix right tackle ahead of time and trade T.
Santori. I was talking. Other people said they're like, if we don't go OT or DT, Bengals are stupid. I kept saying, keep an eye out for corner. Keep an eye. Let's say, Tori, there's only one corner worth taking in this draft. Kool-Aid.
No.
Yeah. Wow, Santori, you got Cam Taylor, you got Juice, and you got Kool-Aid. What's wrong with that?
Juice and Kool-Aid.
Oh yeah.
No, it's so hard to look at mock drafts before free agency. And I kind of got into that with a lot of people on Twitter about a week or two ago. But at the moment, if you're doing a mock draft, I have to take into consideration the current state of the team, which is no defensive tackle and no right tackle. And protecting Joe is more important than stopping the run at the moment. So I would always have to go right tackle. I hope it's fixed before then, or I hope they at least have some veteran that I'm comfortable with if I don't get the opportunity to draft one. But it depends on what the cost is, because there's a shortage on right tackle, cost is going to go up.
Yeah, no, exactly. They did some rankings. They had Jonah Williams in the free agent list way down in the rankings. Like, I think they even had like Becton, who had injury issues higher than Jonah Williams. And I wouldn't even have Becton. By the way, that's a guy to keep an eye on, because of Frank Pollock. You knew him in New York and all. But I can't. Jonah Williams, they had very low on the list. Were you surprised by that?
No.
Hey guys, I'm going to cut out.
Okay.
I will see you on
He hates draft and free agency talk.
See ya, boys.
See you, bud.
Au revoir.
Yeah, but like the free agency, they're not really showing Joe Williams much love in free agency, but he's going to be another McGlinchey. Someone's going to overpay the hell out of him. I think it's just going to be that one team that's going to say, we think he can play left tackle, and he's going to be like, done.
Yep. And he's going to go up 65 pressures a year.
Yeah, no. Jonah Williams, he should have been a guard. Like they said, Alabama, he refused to switch a guard. And if you ask me, Santori, that is a weakness in the draft, because that tells me, okay, this guy does not care about what's best for the team. Say if you're coaching one of your players, Santori, and they're like, no, I'm not switching this position. I'm not playing safety. I'm playing corner, whatever. Wouldn't that be a big red flag for you right there?
It would be a red flag if you didn't want to switch.
That's what I'm saying. And I get it. You make Moore's left tackle, but that's not true. I mean, you look at Lane Johnson, man. He made $32 million in 1 year.
I'm trying to do math.
I can't.
Yeah, but no, I agree. It's
no. I mean, McGlinchey. I mean, I actually liked McGlinchey coming out of Notre Dame. I didn't think he was going to be there, but no. You brought up an interesting statement. Say if we did, I don't think it's going to happen. I'm sure you probably don't think either. The 7th pick, but I did think if that did happen, everybody's just assuming it's Neighbors. But man, if that guy, that Notre Dame tackle, is there at number 7, man, you got to think about taking him. And like you just pointed out, it's a heavy draft for receivers, and also. I don't know what you're thinking of him is not Neighbors, but the other guy, Thomas, would fit us better because he's that big, taller receiver, right? That we need, and they can replace T.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go that route, you can.
Right, and Neighbors, nothing against now. If they did take Neighbors, give me a little Port Shopping here, and probably going to get mad at me for not knowing too much about Neighbors, but give me a little 411 on Neighbors. I'm just curious.
Jamar Chase type receiver.
Okay, it works for me. That's all I need to hear.
I'm not sure if he's as good as Jamar, but he's that type of receiver.
Yeah, you know what? And me and Porchop kind of got into the debate here, because there's some people that like Neighbors more than Harrison. But here's my argument. Look who Neighbors had thrown to him, and look who Harrison had thrown the ball to him.
Right.
I would say quarterback, just not to knock on him, but I think they could do better. Neighbors had the Heisman Trophy thrown to him. So that's my argument right there. Another rumor I heard, let's see. What else am I hearing right now? Corner. Everybody acts like corner's going to be a shock at pick 18. I've said many times I'm not going to be surprised if they go corner. That will not surprise me at all one bit.
It would surprise me a little based on the current standing of the team. But man, it's we'll see. It would surprise me a little bit, but I'm never against taking a corner in the first round. I'm never against taking O-line in the first round, and I'm never against taking D-line in the first round. You either build the trenches or stop the pass in today's league.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. So if you have the quarterback lined up, those are the three I would never question in the first round.
Totally agree with you. I mean, like I say, the Brock Bowers thing, I'm not buying it, man. I mean, last year we had our chance so many times over and over to take a tight end, and we just I get it. The draft board just didn't fall that way, but I mean, you can agree if they really, really, really wanted a tight end, they would have taken one, like in the third or fourth round. I'm sorry, right?
I think they had their eyes set on a couple different guys, and it just didn't fall that way.
Or somebody was probably there that they're like, oh, holy crap, we weren't expecting this guy because that guy Croft or whatever his name was, man.
I mean, let's say you're sitting at this year. Whatever our second pick is. What is that? 50?
What's 18 plus 32?
50.
No, there you go.
So let's say you're sitting at 50, and you're like, oh man, I really want,
Sanders is there at 50. The tight end.
Yeah, let's say you're sitting there and you're like, I definitely want Sanders. That's the guy I'm targeting in the second round. And for whatever reason, Newton falls. And it's like everybody's screaming, hooting, and hollering, oh my God, yeah. And then at the end of the draft, you're like, well, we didn't take a tight end. It's like, well, it was Sanders or Newton. And you're like, oh, well. I mean, sometimes that's why I don't like going into the draft needing a position. I'd rather just sit there, wait, and go, ha, him.
I'll give you probably want to look. I know you remember this guy, Josh Jones, that kid out of Houston. I remember everybody was flipping out every single round. I think some people would even want us to take him. We're not in the first round because then we took Joe Burrow, but T. Higgins, and we passed on Josh Jones. He was there in the third round, and people were just going nuts. They're like, why aren't we picking Josh Jones? He's the only offensive tackle. I'm thinking, well, let's think about this. There's a reason he's falling and nobody else is picking him. Am I right?
Right.
And he's a free agent this year. And I think the knock on him was the short arms and all that. And he's going to be a free agent. I don't know how well he's been doing this year, but obviously if the Texans really wanted him back, they would make sure he's franchise tagged or something. So we'll see.
We will see. There's a lot of junk that's going to happen in the next 2 weeks, honestly.
Yeah, that's where everybody's going to be looking at their phones like crazy. Hey, who knows? We may be doing a show at 2 a.m.
Yeah, I'm going to be getting a sprained thumb refreshing, and then it's going to go, bing, the Bengals signed. Wasn't expecting that. Emergency podcast.
Well, remember
Orlando Brown.
Remember that day Dale did? I think we did. There was 3 podcasts Dale did that day. Remember, I was going to sleep, and I'm doing my bracket, which I couldn't care less about. Then I think there was a text I got. And I have this text name, it's Tom Pelissoro, and I'm like, well, this is probably a fake account or something. This isn't real. And I click on it, I'm like, that's a real. That dude has 630,000 followers. That's no fake account right there. And I mean, I think you were in bed, and me and Jason during the show. You eventually came on, and were you? I assuming you were in bed as well, like thinking, nothing's going to happen, right?
Oh, always.
Yeah, no, I couldn't sleep that night, man. So that was an awesome night. So hopefully something like that happens again. I think we got some money to spend. Justin Mack, I think we all saw that coming. The Ravens are going to franchise tag him. I'm praying to God Wilkins doesn't get tagged, but what that just means for him is people are not going to be the less guys the more guys get tagged, and there's only like 1 or 2 defensive tackles. Boy, that dude could be getting some money.
Yep. All right, man. Well, I'm going to jump off here. I got to help my wife clean the living room, and then I'm going to go to bed.
Yeah, hey, and if you're Cincinnati, be careful tonight for a tornado warning, okay?
Tornadoes! Deuces.
Deuces.